In this PowerPoint, we're going to look at conditional statements. We can program computers to make decisions based on different conditions. Okay, so we can specify to the computer the order in which it should execute certain instructions, or if it should only execute certain instructions in very specific cases. So that means depending on the conditions, okay, the instructions that our program executes can change, and this is where conditional statements come in. So the order that computer programs execute a set of instructions, so the order that the computer programs go through and execute a set of instructions is called the control flow. So the control structures is what we use to alter the flow of our program. Control structures let us handle different situations that might arise and makes our programs more flexible. So in C#, these type of statements are known as conditional or selection statements. Boolean logic and conditional statements go hand in hand. A computer will determine if a condition is true or false and execute a set of instructions accordingly then. So make sure that you're comfortable with Boolean values, comparison operators, and logical operators. So there's different control structures. We have if statements, if-else statements, else-if statements, we have switch statements, and ternary operators. So let's take a look at if statements first. Conditional statements are the most commonly used control structures in programming. Conditional statements rely on the computer being able to reason whether conditions are true or false. So the most basic conditional statement is the if statement. An if statement executes a block of code if the specified condition is true. So let's take a look at this example. So we have the variable, the data type is string, the variable name is color, and the value is blue. And what we're testing here is if color, if the value of the variable color is equals to blue, then this code block here, everything in here inside of these curly brackets will be executed. Okay, so, and I have the comment in here, this code block will execute only if the value of color is equivalent to blue. Okay, so if this is true, and if what's in the parentheses here is true, then execute everything in here. And what is being executed? We print the string color is blue. Okay, so if the color equals another value was null, then the program skips the block and moves on to the next instruction. So it will ignore everything in here if the color isn't blue. So a few things to note about the syntax, parentheses. Make sure you place the Boolean expression that the if statement is evaluating in the parentheses. So what are you evaluating? Whatever that is, put it inside the parentheses or the brackets. The braces, so after the expression, after the parentheses, write the set of braces, the curly braces. So write the code that will execute if the Boolean expression evaluates to be true inside those braces. And then indentation. The white space doesn't impact our program. You don't have to indent the curly braces, right? There's that block of code there. However, even though it won't impact our program, it's convention to indent the code inside the braces by 2 spaces. Okay, so keep to the convention, keep to the standards of how things are written. Okay. Next, we have if-else statements. So if we want another set of instructions to execute if the condition is false, so if color is blue, then do this. If not, or else, sorry, if the color is blue, then do this. Else, meaning if it's not blue, then if anything else, if the value is anything else, then do this instead. Okay? An else clause can be added to the if statement to provide the code that will only be executed if the condition is false. So here we have the syntax, right? Or rather, here we have an example. So again, we have a variable, the data type is string, variable name is color, and the value is red. Okay, so now we're evaluating is the value of color blue? It's not, right? If it is blue, it will execute this. Color is blue, but it's not. So it's going to execute this, what's in else. Okay, so it says if the color is blue, to execute this, which it's not. Okay, which is not here. So else execute this. So it's going to execute everything in here instead. Okay, so top two lines are just comments. So it's going to execute color is not blue. And how we write it is you write else after the first set of curly braces, and then you have another set of curly braces, and whatever you want to the computer to execute is going to be in here. Okay, whatever code you want to be executed is going to be in that second set of curly braces. Okay, so else follows if. Okay, in an if-else statement, the else statement and then its corresponding code blocks, everything in that curly brackets, still need to follow the if statement and code block. So it comes after. Okay, so number of code blocks. So make sure that if you do include an else statement, if you write else, that you must have a code block with it. Don't just write else and then just end there, right? Obviously. Okay, so there's also else if statements to handle multiple conditions and have a different thing happen each time, right? So conditional statements can be changed by combining if-else statements into else-if. So after an initial if statement, one or more code blocks can check additional conditions, okay? An optional else block can be added at the end to catch cases that do not match any of the conditions. So that's quite a mouthful. So let's go see a real example to kind of understand what I'm talking about here. All right, so here we have our example. So we have, the string data type, the variable color is red. Okay, so the first thing we're testing, we're evaluating is the color blue? Is the value blue? If so, then wait, let me use the color blue. Is the color blue? Okay. If so, then do this, right? Or is the color red? Okay, so if so, then do this. Okay. But what we use here is if the first condition, if color is blue, then do this, right? Else if, okay, so else if, the second thing we're checking, if it's not blue, then else if it's red, then do this. Else, okay, so if it's not blue and if it's not red, then else, this is optional. You can leave it out, okay? Or you can write else and then have another code block execute, and here it's going to say color is not blue or red. Okay, so what you need to understand is you have if, then you can test another thing, else if, and then else if all the above is not true. All right, so each else if statement gets its own conditions. Okay, so make sure to specify the condition if an else if is evaluating. Make sure you specify the condition. Like an if statement, this else if condition goes into parentheses, and if true, will execute what's happening in the code block, right? So same syntax. Else follows else if. If you choose to include an else statement at the very end, the else only statement is optional. Okay, so make sure that if you do include it, make sure that it comes after any else if statements you might have. Make sure it's the last thing. Next, we have switch statements. So using multiple else if statements can get very messy, right? Imagine if you have like 10 else if statements, that can be a lot. So imagine writing an else if statement, right? So for possible number of, let's say, guests or students, or you've invited 20 people, that's a lot. So writing a lot of repetitive code makes it hard to read, and you'll probably end up with errors. The more you write, the more likely that some error might be included somewhere. And maybe you forget to close the parentheses, or you've spelled something wrong, right? So repetitive code means higher likelihood for more errors. So if it's necessary to evaluate certain conditions, several conditions with their own unique output, a switch statement might be the way to go. Okay, so we might need to use a switch statement. Switch statements allow for compact control flow structures. What it does is it creates a single expression and then executes code blocks based on a match case. Okay, so let's go take a look at it. This sounds exciting. Let's go see how to do this. All right, so you have here, you're defining your variable here, color, and the data type is string. You haven't assigned a value, okay? So here, switch color, okay? So the syntax is you write switch, and then in the parentheses, you write the variable name, okay? So again, that's switch, and then in the parentheses, you write the variable name, all right? Then you have only one set of curly brackets, okay? So again, I'll take all this markings away so you can read it. Okay, so what you have is switch, and then the parentheses, and inside the parentheses, you have the variable name. Then you have only one set of curly brackets, and inside it, you have all the cases. So you start with the first case, so case, and then you have it in brackets, blue, sorry, not brackets, you have it in quotation marks, blue, which is the value. So in the case that it's blue, this string, then you have semicolon, sorry, not semicolon, colon, okay, then you write, and this one you can ignore, it's just a comment. So execute this only if the value of color is blue, okay, and then you write, what you want it to do, which is in this case, print color is blue. And don't forget your semicolon here, okay, and then after that you have to break. And in a little while, we'll talk about what break does, okay? So that's it for that case blue. So in case it's blue, semicolon, in case it's blue, colon, do this line of code, okay? And then semicolon, and then break. Now you can go to the next case. So in case that it's red, okay, colon, then you go and do this, okay? Print color is red, and then you break. And then next case that's green, execute this, print color is green, and then you break, all right? And then you have, at the very end, default. And default is what you execute if none of the above conditions are met, and then you break. So for default, you do nothing, okay? So default means print nothing or do nothing. All right, so for default, you just write default, and then don't forget the colon here. All right, so take a look at this. I'm just gonna, in case you need to pause here and look, I'm just gonna take away all the markings. Okay, so you can pause here in case you ever need to come back here and take a look at the syntax. Here we go. All right, so now let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about break. So the break keyword that we just looked at allows the program to exit a block when a specific condition is met. So case, it's blue, print the color is blue, and then you're done. So you want to exit that block, okay? So if none of the conditions are met, the code inside the default case will run, okay? So if it's not red, if it's not blue, it's not green, then the default is what it's going to read and do. All right, so syntax. Okay, so let's take a closer look at each of those things that we did a couple of slides ago. So we looked at case. So rather than writing out each condition, if we're evaluating one value only, we use cases to specify different potential values, so much faster than to write out the if-then thing, right? Okay, and then braces. Rather than having each case having its own code block, I mentioned that the entire statement lives within one set of braces, so you only have one set of braces. And colons. So to distinguish between different cases, we state the case value, okay, in quotations. So case in quotations, blue, and then the colon. So that code should execute if that case has been met. Okay. And then a break. Each case code needs to end with a break keyword. That's how you end each case code. Okay, and then of course the default, so every switch statement needs a default case, even if it's nothing. Just don't put anything in there, but you still need to put default in there. All right, next we have ternary operators. A ternary operator allows for a compact syntax in the case of binary decisions. So like an if-else statement, it evaluates a single condition. Okay, it's like an if-else statement. It evaluates one single condition and then executes one expression. It executes one expression if the condition is true. And the second expression, if the condition is not true, okay, if otherwise. Let's go look at an example here. So again, we have string color is blue, so data type, variable name, value is blue, okay? And we have another data type here, variable here, data type is string, the variable name is result. So we have another variable result is if the color is blue, so if this condition is met, then blue, okay? Then result, the value of result is blue. If it's not, then it's not blue. All right? Does that make sense? So that's what it's saying. All right, so a variable result that saves the outcome. Okay, so this variable result here, it saves the outcome of the ternary operator expression. Okay, it saves the outcome of this. All right, so the expression starts with basically the Boolean expression, color equals blue. Okay, this is the expression, and it's being evaluated. And then it's followed by the question mark. Is it blue? Right? Is it? Then there's two possible outcomes. This is the first outcome, and this is the second outcome. Okay, the first outcome would be saved to result if the expression evaluates to be true. If it's true, it would be the first outcome. Okay, if it's true, it would be the first outcome. Otherwise, it will store the second outcome. If it's not true, then it will store the second outcome, not blue. Okay, so true is the first one, and then if it's not true, it's the second one, and they are separated by the colon. Okay, so the syntax. We place the Boolean expression that the statement is evaluating in the parentheses. Okay, so most oftentimes we put the Boolean expression in the parentheses, right? We're used to that by now. And then the question mark operator. Make sure this comes after the statement, so after the parentheses and before the outcomes. And the colon is what separates the two possible outcomes, outcome 1 and outcome 2. Outcome 1 is when it's true, that is outcome 1. Outcome 2 is when it's not true, that is outcome 2. And those two outcomes are separated by the colon.